Hey guys, it's Sheri Vegas, and in this resin tutorial today we're going to be doing that very incredibly popular velvet slash ripple effect in some resin today, but with a little bit of a twist, so make sure you stay tuned. So if you've been watching my channel for a while now, you'll know I've done a coaster tutorial on this sort of velvet slash ripple effect that you can do in resin, which honestly is so cool. But today I'm taking that idea and doing a bit of a twist on it. There's probably people out there that have already done this idea, but it came up in my head the other day and I thought, you know what, that is worth a go. So we're going to see if it is possible to do it, because it is a little bit different than the video that I did do on this. A little few changes, so let's see if it works out, but make sure you stay tuned to the end because I'm going to be taking you through everything that I do to achieve this. First up, I'm just mixing up some crystal cast resin from Makeup, but you could use whatever resin that you wanted to use as long as it's a casting resin. My mold takes around 300 mils, so for my first layer I'm just doing half of that, which is 150 mils in total. So I'm mixing up that resin and I'm going to be adding in some translucent inks. I like the Barnes ones, but you can honestly use whatever you like. For this first piece, I am using the violet, and then I'm also going to be adding black into that, so that way I get two different shades of violet. And I'm going to tell you guys up front that this did not turn out how I had envisioned it, and I was just having one of those days where nothing was going right. But it's good to see that sometimes, you know, even someone that works with resin all the time can make mistakes like this, where I only wanted a few drops of black, and of course I go to try to pour it out carefully and I end up nearly getting the whole bottle of black. I did quickly just put some paper towel in that just to take that top layer off, so that way it wasn't black, it was just going to be a dark violet. So I did manage to save that, and I'm also just putting a little bit of this shimmer powder. It's an Opal shimmer from Archery Creation into my light violet. And then all I'm going to do is be pouring that into my silicone mold. This silicone mold is from Shattered Shapes. You can use whichever mold that you like for this effect. Just you want to make sure that it is a bit deep. It doesn't need to be super deep, but it needs to be at least over a centimeter for you to achieve this. And then in the middle, I'm just adding that lighter color violet. Only a few air bubbles, so I'm just quickly doing a quick burst with my blowtorch. You do have to be really careful with your blowtorch and not to burn your silicone molds, so really light and gentle, or you could use a heat gun. But if you go too hard with your blowtorch, you are going to end up ruining your molds faster. Now, this is where I went wrong. I just put the fabric completely over the top and then had to pull it in to create the ripples, and then I just kept getting more and more air bubbles trapped. I kept playing with it, I kept fiddling with it, thinking if I just lifted it up and pushed those air bubbles out, but as soon as I laid the fabric back down, I just got new air bubbles again, and no matter how I kind of laid this down, it just kept getting air bubbles. And it's kind of one of those things where the more you play with it, the worse you make it, but you keep thinking in your head that you can fix it, and that's exactly what I was doing here. I kept thinking if I just did this or maybe laid it down like this, I would fix it, and honestly it was just too late, and I just had to deal with the fact that it was going to have air bubbles. I came back the next day and I'm just cutting off all of this excess fabric that I have over the edge. It's obviously got resin on it, so it was a little bit hard to cut off. We just want to make sure for the next layer that it's nice and trim and that we don't have all of this resiny fabric hanging over. I mixed up my next batch of resin and I've added a titanium white from Just Resin into this, and this is going to be the background to this piece, which will help highlight the ripple effect. So I know this is not going to be perfect and I will have to do it again, but it's still good to kind of see what it looks like, so that way I know where to go from here. And I've got these two little ones that I made with the leftover resin, just to kind of see my mistakes and a little bit of trial and error. So I think that looks like pretty good for what I want. I'm obviously going to have to go around and like trim all that off. But you can see with this one, like most of that was like overhanging, and I think that looks decent. I would love to know your guys' thoughts. Let's have a look at this guy. That's not too bad. Like obviously, because there's no light resin in the center, it is quite dark. And I do definitely prefer those ripples over this one. Now for the big one. And I always tell you guys, you know, if you've not done it before, start off small. But of course I don't take my own advice, and I already know this is not going to be exactly what I want. So I like the color. Obviously I didn't get the sort of darkness around the edge and all the lightness to the center because I was playing with the fabric too much, and I do have some really big air bubbles that I definitely don't want, so I am going to have to lay down the fabric a lot differently. I honestly thought the fabric might not get as many air bubbles as like the plastic because it's got like air holes in it, but once the resin's on it, it obviously does create that. With this one, like this one is, you know, I can stick my finger into it. That would disappear once I top coated it, and I could fix these by just drilling holes or poking down, and then when I top coated it, the resin would fill those up and you wouldn't end up seeing it. I do like how the fabric is looking. Obviously here, some of that white resin has gone underneath because I did cut the fabric short and it's leaked down under. So you definitely need to make sure that the fabric does overhang the whole way around, so that way there's no chance of that white getting underneath. It's not bad, but it's also not what I'm after, so we're going to do this one again. For this one, I decided to do a turquoise and then the Polysupré blue from Barnes, just so I could mix it up and try some different colors. And I'm following all of the exact same steps with the light color on the inside and the darker color on the outside, and just using a small amount of resin to do my first layer. The change that I made with this was I laid bits at a time, so I didn't just put the whole piece of fabric down and then scrunch it up. I held it up and then just laid down small sections, and as I did that I scrunched it up, so that way the piece that I'm holding up is letting all of that air bubbles out and I'm not getting a ton of them trapped underneath the fabric. Once the first layer had set, it was time to mix up the next batch of resin, add my white, and then pour that on top. So because I've got that translucent color down with the white going on top, that's going to really help make those colors pop. And then I'm just going to be pulling this out of the mold. I didn't bother trimming up the edges this time because I thought I could just do that all at the very end. And I think it's turned out really good. I have no air bubbles with the new way that I've laid down that fabric. I do think it would have been cool if the blue was a little bit darker, because I do feel like the blue does, like the darkness does make it pop against the white. And with my violet one, I think because they were still the same violet but just one was darker, I kind of felt like that was softer and blended in nicer. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the color choice below. So I think if I did this again, I would probably do like the turquoise and then just add the deep blue into another batch of the turquoise, so that way it's just a few shades different instead of this massive contrast. Now of course it wasn't perfect, so I gave it a really good sand back with my orbital sander on both sides, and then I just gave it a really good clean, washed it, then disinfected it with some alcohol spray, wiped that all down, and then I was ready to go for my top coat. And I also found that when I did sand it back a bit, it brought out the like fabric detail more, which I really like. So I think if I did this again, I wouldn't do 50-50 first layer, second layer. I think I would do like a thinner first layer and a thicker second layer to make the colors pop more. The top coat that I am using is from Maker, and it's the same place that I got the casting resin that I used at the start of this tutorial, and it's a really super glossy top coat and I really like using this. And I felt like once it was on, it just really emphasized the ripples and really brought out all of that detail. I then just went over with my blowtorch just to pop any bubbles that might be in my top coat, and that was my finished piece. I really love this effect, but I'd love to hear your thoughts below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and it just shows that even when you do work with a resin for a very long time, you can still have some issues with some trial and error, and you can just honestly just not think things through like I did with my first attempt. But after that I got the hang of it and I really love this. But I'd love to know your thoughts down below, or if you have any other helpful tips or tricks with this effect, leave them in the comments. I'm always happy to see what you guys suggest. It's always so helpful. And like always, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. It really helps me out. And if you are new to my channel, please do subscribe, as I post new videos every single week. Thank you guys so much for watching.